let me quickly welcome on behalf of UNESCO and on behalf of GGN, everyone for connecting again. Very great to see you all. I know that this is quite a dedication of time, but we appreciate your interventions and your contribution. We have again 3 hours ahead of us today. We're going to start with the continuation of the presentation of yesterday, actually, by Guy, who is going to go into the different topics, the different criteria that are important, sharing as well some examples based on practical cases. And then I propose we have a short discussion about this presentation, if there are particular questions regarding what you've heard or any comments that you have on that. And then we would have a short quiz. I think it's going to take about 15 minutes to complete the questions. And we follow then with a number of short presentations by some more experienced evaluators that we asked to share their lessons learned, their tips, their hints, things to look out for when you're doing a mission in particular areas of the world. And then we will have, again, like yesterday, a very short sanitary break, followed by a discussion to end. So if this is okay, then maybe we can start with the presentation of Guy. Guy, over to you.
Okay, I'll go directly in the presentation. Before, hello, everybody. It's a big pleasure to be with you. Yesterday, I was very happy to see so many friends and so many colleagues at the same moment, and I'm really missing you a lot. So yesterday, Nicolas and Christophe have provided many useful information on the structuration of the program and also on this fundamental document, which is a checklist. So I am just going to do today a kind of highlighting of points which are for the council and for myself very essential. One thing that I would like to say at this moment, I would like that we can have a dynamic presentation. So I am not doing a course. You are not just listening. You can participate. You can ask the floor at any time of my presentation, and I will be happy to stop and exchange with you and come back to the presentation, right? I am sure that Tina will manage it perfectly. So, going inside the subject, the first point, as you see in the screen, is the boundary. Yesterday, Christophe has underlined that the problem of boundary is one of the main reasons of differing or rejecting an aspiring geopark. This is a very strong problem. And as we have seen yesterday, you need to check when you arrived in an aspiring geopark that there is a well-defined boundary. It's an unified territory. How it defines the boundary, it means, does it follow pre-existing limits? And check that this boundary is communicated through maps, leaflet, and all publications. But I would like to share you why the boundary is so important. Next slide, please. Okay. So we have two maps there, Australia and Europa. And it's very easy to see the huge difference existing inside limits. In Australia, all the limits are straight, right lines. In Europa, you have a lot of movement, curves, and so on. Why is this difference? Why is this different vision of a territory? One, Australia is a result of a colonization. So people arrive there thinking that it is a wild territory with no history. And how there is no history, they have divided the lands on a geometric way. So we see there a territory who was considered as without history. France, Europe, you can see, result of thousands of years of fights, of delimitation of small territory going to a national level. So one part, no history. Here, a map result of the history. Next one, please, Tina. And is the same problems or the same situation with United States and with China. United States, again, a result of colonization. Colonizers arrive, there is no history, we divide the territory. China, the same than for the example before with Europe, a territory full of history, which is providing the reason of this link. Next, please. Okay, very important. So you can see here the territory without memory, result of the colonization, straight line, and on the right side, the territory from autochthonous people, the people who was living there for more than 50,000 years, and we were forgotten with the colonization. So getting a good definition of a territory, it means is defending the cultural identity of the local population connected with the surrounding, with this landscape. You know perfectly that in all rural countries, small communes, everybody knows the limit of the communes. Oh, the limit nor is close to the tree of the grandfather of the grandfather. Oh, this river is the end of the commune and connecting with the next one. The spatial reference for the local population is their cultural territorial identity, which begins at the smallest level, which is the communal level. So finding the adapted boundary is helping and finding the correct local, cultural, and geographical and societal identity of our local population. So we are going, next slide, to see some examples that you may know we speak. Same territory. On the right side, we have limits following the different communes limits. This is good. On the left part, you have a project of geopark done by a team who don't understand really the concept of the geopark. And as for a mine exploitation, they drew a square on the map saying that is our territory. This is totally wrong. Next slide, please. Okay. It's not very visible, I am sorry, but you have to look with attention. On the left map, you have a white limit there, thank you, Tina, which is a limit connected with a geological structure. Geopark is not connected with geological structures, are connected with real territory. We are not inventing new territories. We have enough like that. This is not accepted. This is wrong. On the right side, you have the same territory, the same geological unit, but integrating a surrounding area delimited by the limits of the different communes. This is correct. Another example. Here, same islands on the left are wrong. Wrong, why? Because it's not a unified territory. You have all the islands outside the main islands, outside creating other territory. So this is not admissible, it's not accepted. The solution is on the right path, with the full integration of a marine area, integrating the different ice before. So you must know that this problem are quite common, and it's very easy for you to detect them on the film and before. That I would like to add is about the preparation of the mission. Yesterday, Babis, Arthur, and others senior evaluator have insisted clearly on the necessity of a good preparation for a mission. Probably we need to spend more time in the preparation than in the redaction of the report. It's a huge time to spend in preparation. You need to investigate by internet, checking data, be preparing yourself to be inside the territory with already thousands of questions. And I must share with you that I love maps, that studying deeply a map of a geopark gives you a lot of information. All senior evaluators know that by analyzing a project of a geopark through a map gives a fantastic quantity of information about the potential quality of the project. But maybe we will come back later about that. Next slide, please, Tina.
Sorry, Guy. I think this was one of the slides that I had in my presentation, and I moved it to your section. I don't know if you've seen it, but this is this was Cabo Ortegal, but this was before actually that came with the initial application where we realized.
Yeah, sorry to jump in, but that's not. They weren't deferred; they were approved.
No, it was approved. It was done before the intergovernmental check. It was just to show that this was a very initial proposal that was corrected on time because they had missed to integrate, for example, a Ramsar site. There were some marine sites that were not integrated, and the eventual proposal included all these sites. So it's just to show the transition from one proposal and a correction of it.
Yeah, perfect. Tina, okay. So next point. Visibility. Yesterday, Christophe has also shared with us the importance of the visibility on projects which were deferred or rejected. So what you have to do in visibility, you know already that, analyze the level, quality, and the viability of information, interpretation, and promotional tools, and check, of course, if they are understandable for a wider audience. An aspiring geopark with a lot of panels made by scientists which are not understandable, have no any utility. You need to check also the presence of the geopark inside the social media and check also if exists geopark corner or other tour in partners of the geopark. That I would like to say now. The importance is not the quantity. Sometimes we say in a report of young evaluator, oh, they have placed 70 panels of information. The point is not to have 70, 100 panels. We need to have good panels. And for that, you need to check not the number of panels, you need to check the quality and the adequation of panel. It means placement, form of the panel, how it conceived. The way to panel is a tool of communication, and it should be adapted in its form, is in shape, in its content, is in possibility to be understood to this role of communication. And next slide, please. And inside these tools of visibility, you know perfectly, we have the classic entrance gate, we have panels along the roads. Next slide. We have the necessary directional panels with the name of the site and sometimes number of the site. We have the parking panels, and here we have at the end of the image a big geopark advertising panel. This is an example from Vietnam. Next one, please. And we have our information panels with different size, different shape, with a content which need to be short, understandable. A panel is not a piece of a book. There is no interest to have too long text that nobody is going to read. We have statistics, and we know that we have less than 50 people of the visitor who really read panels. Panels of quality, panels of sense, and we go in the next slide, and we are looking a person which is admiring a wonderful landscape. And maybe you have lived this experience. I have lived on my side. You are in the mountain, you are walking 2, 3, 4 hours. You arrived on top on the mountain to admire this landscape. And what happens when you arrive? Next slide. You have a panel from a national park which is hiding you the view. And I must say you, I want to block this panel because I didn't came there after 3 hours walking to receive in front of my eyes, hiding the landscape, an informative panel. So next. So before the geopark, this simple visibility, there are other things to integrate if we work with the vision of quality and sense. So a signalétic panel has to respect one basic rule. It's the visitor freedom. Next slide, Gina, please. The freedom to not have information, to feel the place, to be in contact with elements is not an obligation for a visitor to learn all the time about geology, about your geopark and all that. We need to respect that. And we need also to respect the freedom of the visitor who want to learn, who want to have to access to information. So for that is a delicate but very interesting balance to use when we are placing panel and also when you are analyzing the visibility. And of course, we have other tools that can be used to transfer information without creating a pollution of the territory, where it could be QR code or specific apps and so on. Next slide, please. Also, in some specific territory, the use of information panel, as we know in Europe and other parts of the world, can't be recommended. It's not absolutely a good idea to place in this territory classic information panels. And in this case, the information should be substituted by that we can call a geopark landmark system. You have there a landmark, you have the logo of the geopark, we have the number of the site, and you have a QR code, which is giving you the information about the landscape. Next slide. So where can it be possible and reasonable to use a landmark? We have several experiences in geopark in the world about it. One in less economically developed territory. 2, territory with wild area, wild landscape. In a place like that, you can't imagine to place a panel explaining something. You need to invent another system. Territory with aggressive climate and weathering. In this country, a classic panel will not resist 6 months. It's totally destroyed. And territory also, where the visit is possible only through guided tour. If you are in a guided tour, if you are in a car, like in this example in Ngorongoro and Ngai, why do you want to have panel? Next slide, please. So I am going to take you the example of Ngorongoro and Ngai. They have organized their site in 3 main routes that you can say: Caldera route, North route, South route. Next. Next slide, please. Okay, and they have placed this geopark landmark with the number and but no QR code. Okay, with this number. The first time that I see this landmark, which were not very nice for me, I've asked to the team, why have you done that? When we were speaking before about landmark, we are speaking about something aesthetic, nice, and the answer was, well, you know that here there are thousands of buffalo who are passing hundreds of elephants, and if we don't place something so strong, it will be disappear in a few weeks. So this explains the strange shape on the photo. Next slide. And they have produced leaflet of the different routes. And next slide. They have produced film booklet of the route. What is interesting also is that you know perfectly is that creating and maintaining classic information panel represent a lot of money. In this case, they have changed the movement, no spending money on information panel, but contrary, receive money by selling their field book to the visitors, which are inside guided tours. Next slide, please. In coming back to visibility, beside the panels and so on, you know that there are a lot of different equipment. We can have observation tower, we have pass, we have platform, and many other things. But one thing which is very important in your mission to look, next slide, is taking care of the security of the equipment. The point is not only and simply to have a site equipped or to have a panel in, for example, we have a case of a site in Cao Bang in Vietnam. The site itself is on the other side of the road, the parking on the left side. So in the site equipment, the geopark there has placed a road mirror because we are at the end of a curve and is dangerous, and the zebra pass. All that is a part of your evaluation. It's not enough to have a parking available on a seat. This equipment needs to be secure for the visitor. And the security, in this case, need to be developed, obviously, in adequation with existing national, regional safety norms for public security. Next slide, please. Also, it's not enough to have a platform. It's not enough to have a panel in front of a panorama. If there is a risk, this risk needs to have an answer in terms of safety, and this includes risk of falling rock, dangerous paths, and so on. So, I insist, visibility is not, I have 100 panels. It's not, oh, they have a path. No, you need to analyze at all levels in terms of quality, including the security. Because don't forget that if an accident exists, they will, the local authority will look for, and somebody will say, oh, we get an expert from JJN UNESCO there, and he said us nothing. So we need to take really care more and more on this aspect of security of equipments toward the public. Next slide, please. Indigenous people. Indigenous people is also a very important subject, and more in the future with a new candidature in Asia, I hope in Africa quite soon, and in South America, you will face the necessary analysis for indigenous people. And if you are not experienced in it, it can be complicated. Just to remember you that it's very important subject in our guidelines, is a priority field for UNESCO. And I don't have to remember you that the indigenous people are the more endangered communities in all the world. Next slide. So how do you have to proceed? If you're going to a geopark where it seems that it's possible to have an indigenous community, you need to do research. Because sometimes, and for several reasons, sometimes they are not considered inside the candidature dossier. It happens sometimes, not often, sometimes, that Geopark present a candidature without any reference with indigenous people community living in its territory. So I guess that is our responsibility before the mission to not stay stick to the candidature dossier, but doing a serious research in internet. So this is the first point. Second point is to analyze the correct knowledge of the geopark with indigenous people. If he knows how many groups they are, if he has notion of the difference and all that. About one important question is about if the geopark has a repartition map of indigenous people. Indigenous people are not everywhere in the territory. They are connected, they have a cultural coherence inside a part of the territory. This is a fundamental data to work with indigenous people. And of course, for check that they are correctly represented inside the management board and they participate in all decisions concerning their cultural territory. Next slide, please. How to proceed? When you are in an aspiring geopark with indigenous people, request to speak with traditional leader. Sometimes traditional representative of indigenous people are not directly representing their community. And speaking with them, you need to check that the information that you have received from the aspiring geopark is correct. You need to identify and check if the indigenous people has a specific language and trying to understand if there is a risk of disappearing. Trying to know if this language is oral and written. And if it's written, check that the geopark is promoting this language in all its publications. There is absolutely nonsense that you have in an indigenous territory a panel with a national language and in English. It's not by this kind of attitude that a geopark can involve its population. When there is an indigenous people, the first duty of a geopark is to integrate, to show its respect to them and integrate their written language, if exists, inside, or their communication documents. And if necessary, you should insist with the geopark on the importance of the promotion, protection of the cultural identity of the indigenous people and of their language, and ensure that their knowledge should be transmitted to new generation. Speaking about language, you need to never forget that today we have still around 1,600 languages, indigenous languages in the world, and that one of these languages is disappearing each 15 days. And each time is the incredible story of thousands of years of relation between man and earth, describing their environment, their mountain, everything which disappear forever. So it's a very serious task, it's a great responsibility for you. So please, when you are going in indigenous population inside a new geopark, take care a lot about that. Next slide, please. Also, climate change action. Climate change is fundamental, and more now maybe than before. It's fundamental for the aspiring geopark sustainability, but also for the planet sustainability. It's very good to do a lot of scientific research, and that the geopark says, oh, we have an agreement with this university to think about, but also it's fundamental to have a simple political policy and simple action. So concerning climate change, I think that you need to see if the geopark has a real compromise, not saying us, oh, we are in climate change because it's in the guideline and all that. No, if they are very compromised with this subject, if they said yes, check that the geopark has adopted simple practical measures. For example, no plastic bottle use in the meeting, no plastic bottle use during your mission, selective recycling for its infrastructure. This is important, and you need to observe if the geopark has understood what means simple action for climate change. In the event of a maritime presence, it's important to check that the geopark in its policy is integrating and promoting the problem and specificity of its maritime environment, and all your conclusions should be reflected in a report in the chapter connected with climate change. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to share with you what we consider, all of us, a very important issue. It's a different evaluation and a strong difference which occur in the past council session between evaluators and council decision. As you see, we get only one case of a proposal of a red card for a revalidation, and it was totally justified. And in the context, the council has decided to provide a yellow card. But at the contrary, on another way, we get several cases for validation where the evaluator has proposed to accept and the council has decided to defer and reject. Next slide, please. This dissociation, this cohesion of opinion between that we are all UNESCO Geopark experts generates several important problems and negative reactions that you need to understand. One, it's a loss of confidence of the territory concerned for its evaluator. I mean, the territory see the result of the council and don't understand. Oh, but my evaluators have said that I'm very good. What happens? It's also a risk of losing the general credibility of the concerned evaluator. And it is also a risk of weakening the council, and I must say, the whole entire UGGP program. A misunderstanding and a deep and negative dissatisfaction of the territory concerned, which cannot understand how, after having enthusiastic evaluator, how the council must take an opposite decision. And this dissatisfaction conducts often to a strong mobilization of the concerned national delegation, which are producing strong, negative, and dangerous diplomatic pressure on the program and interference. And finally, it's an incoherent evaluator's image provided toward the observer, numerous observers present during the council meeting. Next slide, please. So we need to never forget and keep in mind that the evaluator, you know, that can't anticipate any council decision and can't provide any advice on its future decision. Second point, demonstration of excess of enthusiasm during a mission due to a great local reception, feast, impressive seat is not recommendable. All of us, we are impressed, we are very grateful for fantastic reception, but our role is to not demonstrate our enthusiasm to avoid misunderstanding from the territory and create this discohesion between maybe a wrong perception on the field and the decision of the council. The third point is we have already spoken, a deep knowledge of the dossier, a deep preparation of the dossier. This is fundamental of a good mission, and a deeply attention on the checklist that you will check another time practically on the field. And you need to be attentive to that I call warning signals, which are provided by experience in the field. And I think that all the more experienced experts of our network know and practice this kind of signal. And next slide. And I would like to share with you some experience tips that maybe can be useful to detect a possible problem which can limit an enthusiastic decision. The concept of a geopark was historically created in a rural area as a tool to balance and stop the huge emigration and rural population decline. And as it's indicated in the guideline, a geopark needs to produce sustainable development. And sustainable development is fully connected with the adapted information and involvement of the UNESCO Geopark population in the process, in the decision making, and so on. In a geopark, the involvement of the population can be done only by TV news, by radio, by media, social network, but should pass through the establishment and the presence of direct contact and dialogue between the UNESCO Geopark staff and the population. Considering the 167 geopark, if we want to do a very simple and quick average of a ratio team by population, we have an average which more or less should be around 10 staff for 100,000 inhabitants. Do you think really that a staff of 10 people can involved, can manage, can create partnership in front of a population of 2 or 3 millions of inhabitants. Next slide, please. The sustainable development is also connected with the good site repartition. And perfectly, you know, unlike traditional vision of tourism, which concentrates visitor and socio-economic impact in only a few sites, geotourism consists in distributing this economic impact over the whole of its territory. And for this, an adapted quantity of sites, well-distributed territory is necessary. A short study of our geopark, if we are doing a very approximative average, can give around 40 sites open for the public to around 2,000 square kilometers. For the same superficie, the normal, useful, common quantity of the team is around 10 people, staff from 2,000 square kilometers. These experience tips are somewhere useful, but only useful in the case of very great aspiring geopark, greater than 5,000 square kilometers, and or with a high population density. In case of doubt, and to avoid the wrong analysis, these tips can maybe help you to avoid to go enthusiastically in a decision which will be not supported by the council. And to finish this presentation, I will use next slide 2 examples. Next slide, Fina, please. Okay, 2 study cases that I have transformed in theoretical case to not involve the territories inside. Proposal accepted by evaluator, rejected by the council. So we are going to see 2. First one, please. Okay, so you have the map here. Black is the limit of the territory. Red are the limit of the district. And it's a full metropolitan area, okay? Size, 800 square kilometers, population, 3.6 million inhabitants, number of sites, 20, and inside the 20 site, 12 geological sites, staff, 2 people. Next slide, please. What to do in this situation? The first thing is keeping in mind the great problematic ratio population staff and the inadapted size of the team. We have said before, I mean, how 10 people staff can involve seriously 3 million of inhabitants. Also analyzing the site repartition in this map, and you can see easily that all the sites are in a third part of the territory. On the left side, there is one unique site in all the 2/3 other part, and this site is not from international value interest. And with this contestation, you need to feel that maybe the responsible of this project don't understand better the UNESCO Global Geoparks concept, and they need to reconsider their project. And in this case, the evaluator proposal should be defer and reject. Next, please. What was necessary to control, to discuss with the team when you have identified a problem? Understand that there are other administrative limits inside the metropole area. There is no an obligation to take all the metropole. We can use limit of the district. You need to constate the wrong repartition of the site inside the whole territory and its concentration in the east part. You need also to see that in the part where there is a higher density of sites, there is a lower density of population. You have 600,000 inhabitants there and 3 million on the other part. The non-international value of the unique sites there, and often we have to do that. Normally, this evaluation mission should have been transformed from the beginning in a support mission, providing advice to the team to formalize on another form this project and present a successful candidature. Next slide, please. And what are the solutions? One possible solution, you have already seen to that, is to limit the geopark on the east part, yellow limit. It can provide a geopark with 90 sites, 300 square meter, 600,000 inhabitants, which is something much more manageable than the previous proposition. Next slide. Another territory in two administrative regions, which doesn't have a good relation between them. It's a 12,000 square kilometer. It's absolutely not a desertic area. Desertic area, it's another problem. It's a normal territory with everywhere people, villages, sites, and all that. IUGS didn't identify their significant site of international value. The global population is 1.3 million inhabitants, and we have 45 sites, one site for 377 square kilometers, and we have also sites outside the geopark boundary with a site, a staff of 10 people, and another geopark, existing geopark there at 10 kilometers from the border, and the presence of this geopark was not inside the candidature dossier. So evaluator propose accept and the council reject. Next slide, please. What to do there? Consider first the problem of the limit. To not have site outside the geopark is a theoretical case that we have seen at the beginning of my presentation. Provide attention of the very low density of site and the huge superficie of this project, 45 sites for 17,000 square kilometers, and also the quantity of the staff. Consider the difficulty to manage the geopark between two big, different, and not free and administrative regions. Consider the lack of positive IUGS advice, and this is the case. The evaluator proposal should have been defer or reject. Next slide, please. So what are the solutions in this case? Of course, reduce the territory, create new limit in one region based on district limit, integrating the islands which were outside, and this possible solution should provide a territory 4,000 square kilometers, 200,000 inhabitants, and 20 sites. And in this case, also the mission should have been from the beginning reoriented toward a support mission, helping the territory to understand this problem and to prepare a successful candidature. And in this territory, there is a possibility for at least 2 UNESCO geoparks, considering the difference of the geological heritage. Next slide, please. So before going to the last point, safety, the conclusion is good preparation, and it's more useful for you, for the council, for the work program, to be prudent in your recommendation than to be enthusiastic and after to have your decision contested by the Council. Last point is your personal safety. With the increase of the network, you will go more and more in new countries with sometimes difficult climate condition or specific political or social situation. And you need their minimum security rules, and awareness need to be followed by our evaluator. So the few rules that I'm going to show you are coming from United Nations security course, and they are fully adapted for our specific use. Quickly, next one, jet lag. You know perfectly that it's very difficult when you have 7, 8, 10 hours jet lag to begin fresh emission. So you have several techniques about that. My experience is not take any chemical, not change your time sleeping. If you arrived at 7 evening, you are very tight. Resist until 10, your normal time to sleep, to recover as quickly as possible your biological time. Next one, please. Before preparation, you need to obtain information about the possible health problem and of the country and the preventive measure. And you have also to consider if you have specific sickness and how it can be treated and following treatment in this mission. Next one. I would like to insist of one point which occurs mainly in South America and in Asia is altitude sickness. In Spanish, it's called soroche, and you can live in a place close to the sea and arrive suddenly at 5,000 meter high, and this is very dangerous. You need, if you are going to an aspiring geopark, which is at 4,500 meters high, you need to change totally your mission program. You need to arrive. You need to take at least 2 days to begin an adaptation before going on the field and do progressively your 3-4 days of mission. So if you are going in this situation, we are not speaking about 3-4 days of mission. We are speaking about 6 or 7 days mission, and this is fundamental for your own security. Next slide, please. In tropical country, very basic precaution, drinking water. If you don't have mineral water that you can buy boiled drinking water, not drink milk unpasteurized, avoid ice as maximum, avoid brushing your teeth with unsafe water, and take care about all the local alcohol that you can be invited to drink. Next slide. Insect, reptile, parasite, tropical country, of course, taking adapted shoes, take care to not having any animals going inside your food in the night, and this happens often. And if you are to go out of your sleeping place in night, take all the time a light and observe precisely what are your surroundings. Next slide, please. Malaria, also frequent. Don't forget to take the adapted prophylaxis. Next slide. And my recommendation is when you are going to a mission, take a small first aid both your own medicine and some personal extra as a personal lighting of good quality. Next slide. And your security is beyond your responsibility. If during the mission you have spoken already, Christophe has spoken about that, but it's very important. If you identify a potential risk, you need to refuse it. You are not in a validation mission or revalidation mission to practice extreme outdoor activities. And never forget that the site of the geopark that you will visit will need to be accessible for a general public. So feel free to say, I think this is dangerous. I am not going to do. Next slide. So to be more prepared, if you are going in this kind of country, my strong recommendation is please do the course of UN security. You have the website there. It will take you only 45 minutes. You will receive a diploma that you can keep, and this will help you a lot for your security and for a successful mission. I was very long. I am sorry. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Guy. This was a very interesting presentation. I think you touched the very important points of the different criteria. I see that there's already a lively discussion as well on the chat. I've seen a comment from Guy, from Chris, from Christine as well. So maybe we can quickly open the floor for questions and particular remarks that you would like to bring up on anything that you've heard of the presentation of Guy. I'm opening the floor. Please raise your hand. Nope. Was there anything about, I mean, the number of the staff, the average number of staff related to the territory that people said you can, I think it was mentioned yesterday as well by Nicholas, you can of course have volunteers as well in support. It's important as well that you have a good overview, that you have a good insight when you're visiting the site, what is really the regular staff and what is the additional support, be it from partners or from volunteers. I see that Chris is raising his hand.
No, you've just made my point for me. Thank you, Christophe. But I was just thinking that in many cases there will be a lot of partnership agreements whereby a relatively small number of staff might be delivering quite a lot of work through really good engagement with partners through partnership agreements, and that's always something worth thinking about as well, is all I'd say.
Thanks, Chris. I think it was a valid point as well that Christian brought up. I'm not sure if everyone saw it, but check as well if you have particular medicines that they're accepted in the country that you're going to travel to. You don't want to be stopped at the border for any drug transport. It's important to look at. And indeed, the course that Guy referred to in the end of his presentation, I recommend you all to do it. We have to do it as a refresher course every once in a while, but it's just some very basics. It's very logic, but it's important that you remind yourself of it. So if you have a chance, do that course. Martina, you raise your hand, and then John.
Thanks so much, Christophe. Again, deep thanks to Guy for this very informative presentation and very important issues we are discussing frequently in Council. And I think there are some things which are not still quite clear, of course, mainly regarding territories, because it's not detailedly written anywhere. And that's why such a presentation are really useful and necessary for us. For example, a discussion about urban and rural territory. There are many discussions why we should focus just rural territories, and there are some potential urban territories, etc. But the case explained by Guy as an example one was quite illustrative, and it was quite clear that the geographical distribution of geosites is something we should really try somehow to check very carefully. And the same with the geographic distribution of population, local population, and to make kind of match with this. I'm thinking now about, because we have geography department, to create kind of program to identify the kind of risks if you are trying to determine the territory of new geopark. Of course, it should be just to identify you have some risk regarding the distribution of geosites, etc. So this is very important. I just want to add that if you have this situation, that you have rural territory full of very potential geosites, and other part next to it, urban, which is full of people, heavy population, and few sites, few geosites, it is possible, of course, to have geopark in the rural side with a lot of geosites and cooperate very closely with the part which is not inside, not included, the urban one, not included in the geopark territory, but you can cooperate, you can educate all the heavy population in the urban side, and it is a very positive result of this geopark. So it doesn't mean that it is not included in the geopark, that you have no impact and the geopark doesn't benefit this urban population. So this is one thing. The second one regards the very nice explanation of visual, let's say, pollution, sometimes made by many panels, explained by Guy very clearly. And also the example with the totem, somehow respecting the, let's say, landscape spirit and character and territorial identity of the local and indigenous people. But sometimes in such territories or localities, the signal is missing. So the QR code or something like it sometimes doesn't work. But in this situation, you can make simply information how to access, for example, local guide, local people. They can guide you perfectly, and they are proud. They cannot pay money, so it has many benefits. And also you can make information about website information which is available, or booklet available in the interpretative center. So this is one. And the last thing, medicine or the safety, it is very important, really. I can tell you my experience, for example, from Nicaragua. Everywhere are dogs. Everywhere are full of dogs, and it could be really dangerous. And of course, some countries, they don't have vaccination, for example, against rabies. Yeah, so be very careful, because if you are in country and Nicaragua doesn't have, or in the time I've been, and you need vaccination in 2 days if you have accident with the dog, and it can be really mortal, the problem. So it's really serious, and you should know if the vaccine which is in your country quite normal. And I have to really tell you that I have no idea that in Nicaragua you can't have this vaccination, and I haven't been, for example, prepared for this case. So this is very, very practical, concrete information, because dogs are all the world. So again, thanks very much, Guy, for perfect presentation.
Thank you, Martina, for that last tip as well. I hope that Helga and Patricio were listening, because they're going to do the revalidation of Rio Coco. But good points. John, I liked your comment there, nothing about us without us. I'm not sure if you're going to talk about this.
Yes, thank you, Christoph. I was going to mention that just briefly again, because people may not have seen it in the chat. Of course, I echo the sentiments that Guy made on everything, of course, but particularly with Indigenous people, being that we're both on the Indigenous working group. And I just wanted to pass on that phrase, nothing about us without us. And that's what the Indigenous people here in Canada employ. And what they mean is, it is not, and I would suggest that it be aware that in the absence of Indigenous people, which may be problematic, that non-Indigenous people are not speaking for them and saying, oh, yes, we interpret all their stories and whatnot, because this is not for us to do. These stories are theirs. It's respect, as Guy said, and it's very important. So that phrase, nothing about us without us, I think is very, very important. The other point I would like to make is actually a question of Christophe and others, is, and I don't want to make it personal, but I'll use myself as an example. I really appreciated the practical advice, Guy, about elevation and things. So in my case, I have asthma developed from a previous lung condition where I've lost some lung function. So hiking rigorously at high elevations is difficult for me. I just wonder, is there a way that we can, if we're assigned a prospective evaluation or revalidation mission, is there an opportunity to check about any potential geographic conditions that might impinge our ability to go because of our health situation?
Thanks, John. These are very good points. The first point well taken. And the second point, what I can say is that in our roster, we have, of course, a comment section. For some of the people in our roster, we know that there are certain conditions, be it in terms of logistics, in terms of travel, but also in terms of medical conditions, and we take that into account. So if you let us know, we keep that, of course, always strictly confidential, that we keep that into account before suggesting. But again, when we suggest a mission, it's what it is. It's a suggestion. You're not obliged to accept it, and of course, you can always suggest, and we will take that into account. But if we know it up front, of course, we adapt ourselves.
Okay.
That's good to know. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lovies, over to you.
Yes, hello again, everybody. Guy gave us some very nice and helpful tips that we can use during our mission. But if you allowed me, I would like to highlight that each territory is different from the other, which means that probably we cannot apply everything horizontally, and that's why we need to be open-minded. This is something that we always have to remember when we are in the field. We have to listen the local people, their explanations in the cases that there are some discrepancies from several of these general rules. And it's always very important, I think, to realize that a geopark is based on collaboration of many different actors in the territory, which collaboration should be voluntary. If the collaboration is not effective, then I think it's something like a right to the management to exclude or not to include some particular territories within the geopark, because this makes their management more effective. And in some cases, I have an example. Sometimes if you have a marine area and the marine area is managed by a national organization, which is very bureaucratic and very problematic in collaboration, we cannot actually ask them why you do not include also this part, for example, in your management. So my main comment was that each territory is different. We have to be open-minded and to listen to see why some discrepancies, differences may occur there. Thank you.
That's a very good point you're making there, Bobbies, and we see it indeed that sometimes you wonder why certain parts are not excluded, and then normally people come up with very valid explanations. It all depends from one case to the other. Well taken. Hartmut, over to you.
Okay, thanks a lot. And thanks, Guy, for the explanations, which are always welcome. But I still have some questions about boundaries and borders. And so you may remember that some years ago, I made a revalidation, especially the people from the council might know what I'm referring to, that in many cases, or in some cases, I've seen borders are not reflecting the community borders. And as far as I have learned when we started geoparks, the biggest thing was the bottom-up approach. And the local people, from my point of view, in many, many cases, know exactly and very well which parts of a community or a county should be in the geopark or without. If we are coming from the outside and telling them you have to have a deal like this and that, and we are telling you what your boundaries should look like, I think we are losing a little bit of track of this bottom-up approach. In some cases, I can imagine you brought the picture where the geological map was, and the first idea was to identify the geopark along the geographical and geological map. And then you had the other slide where you said, okay, better take the community borders, but sometimes in this place, in this example you used, it was a quite nice round figure. But sometimes, as you can imagine, county borders are differing totally. So if you are focusing completely on county or community borders, the shape of the geopark might be very, very strange and is not reflecting geosites in many cases. So in this particular question, sometimes I have some problems, I tell you.
Thanks, Hartmut. I don't know if Guy wants to react on this. Or
hello, Ahmed. Pleased to see you. I have explained, I mean, doing a geopark has not to be limited to geology, but to the space of life and development of the population. But I want to react about one thing you have said, that you have said, oh, people know exactly where pass the border of the geopark inside a municipality, for example. But this is creating a problem, I mean, because why all these people are paying tax for their municipality, they need to receive the same impact, for which reason a part of a population of a commune paying his tax to the commune will beneficiate of the geopark, and the other part of the population outside will not beneficiate of the geopark. This is creating one. It's not equal for us. We need to provide equality of treatment for all the population. And is developing, we have cases in the past of a lot of problems. Why is the limit pas there? There is no reason. The reason is why? Because the geology stops there. It's not acceptable. It's opening of a lot of local conflict. We don't need conflict. The best reasonable way to define a border is not thinking to geology, of course, but to thinking of the pace of life of inhabitants, and the first smallest reference is their commune limits. So following pre-existent limit is a safe situation for a real sense of the geopark and for sustainable development. Thank you.
May I also add something, Christophe? Because I think it's extremely important issue what Hartmut brought. It's and I would like to continue a little bit what Guy have said. Sometimes, okay, we are humans and we can have different approaches to a certain issue, and it's all issues. For me, should be respected, and we can have different approaches. There is no question. But at the end of the day, we are there to judge and to nominate a territory with a specific area, which should be understandable, neither from me or from you, Hartmut, or from Guy or from any other else. But when we speak about the name of a municipality, that's why we are following also administrative borders. Anyone, each one of our citizens, each one of the visitors, each one of among the community should understand which is the area nominated as a UNESCO Global Geopark and what is an area which is not nominated as UNESCO Geopark. If we are constructing limits that the state itself does not recognize, the community itself does not recognize, then it will be extremely difficult to for the people living there to understand which is the geopark and which is not the geopark. And we are in a stage with a lot of misunderstandings, and we should avoid such kind of misunderstandings. That's why we insist on the administrative limits, which are not our limits created by the evaluators or somebody else, but are the limits that are recognized by the state itself, the member state of UNESCO, the people living in the territory. So if within that administrative limit there is geological heritage of international importance, then this is the frame of the geopark. I think this is important to understand, that it's not me, you, or anybody else who can have a different approach, but what matters is what each one of the citizens that will Google the name of the territory would find the territory and the limits, and will understand that this is the nominated by UNESCO territory. Sorry.
Thanks, Nicholas and Guy. Hartmut, I'm not sure if this is a little bit clear. I know that I recognize that this is a very complicated topic, because the statutes and the guidelines don't give us too much exactitude about what is to be considered now as a single unified territory and pre-existing borders. But I think with the discussion that we've had here, I think we have a little bit more of a feel of what it is actually that sometimes seems odd to the Council. I recognize as well that a lot of these issues could have been probably identified at an earlier stage and shouldn't have been. Sometimes they break open in the Council as a big surprise, and probably it is a topic that should have been discussed earlier. So from our side as a Secretariat, we're looking much closer as well to the boundaries that we receive at the moment of application. We try to discuss this upfront as well with the Council. But you as well, if you're out there in the territory and there is any doubt, never hesitate to get back either with the Secretariat or with people in the network to double check and see what they think about it. But I think it is the most important, as the Geopark has really thought through, that indeed they try to follow these pre-administrative borders, and that these borders are clear for everyone. This year we have an applicant as well with a very strange border, but we've had several exchanges with the territory, and we start to understand why exactly they have changed, why they have chosen these boundaries, and I think we can accept that. It's just sometimes they seem to have been designed by preconceived ideas without thinking it really through. Not sure if this is a clear explanation. I guess that it will remain a little bit of a topic of discussion.
If I may, short comment. So for me, it was only important to have a clear message. I guess when we started, this message that we have to follow the county borders was not that clear. If this is so in the future, for me, then it's fine, you know. But for me, it was at that stage, it was not clear.
Got it.
Probably, Armand. Probably.
Jutta.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello again. First of all, thank you, Guy, for your very, very useful information. I would like to refer to the aspect of the checking previous to the mission. So if we get the reports and go into details, we have some very obvious points, very basic points, and more advanced points. And one of the obvious points is the border, the border aspect. And so my question is, if an application dossier shows very clearly and very obviously that the border is not okay, for example, it follows the geological features and not the administrative borders, or it's not a unified territory, it has islands outside or wide areas inside, then for me, it's clear it's not ready for a mission. And my question is, would it not be useful to go back to the territory and give first advice and to postpone the application process, instead sending a mission on site where we already know before we are there that we need to give the advice to at least defer the application. And the same issue is regarding the situation if you have a big territory and you have the geosites concentrated on one side, and you have a very limited number of staff, and it's obvious that this territory is not manageable. I, for an evaluator, would not like to be in the situation to go on site and to tell them, please reshape your territory, make it smaller, make it different, because this influences the entire dossier. You need to modify everything if you have another territory. I think for us as evaluators, it would be more helpful if obvious obstacles occur, which make the missions more difficult, or even obvious that a defer would occur. Then it would be more helpful to postpone the application instead of sending us on site. Would this be an option or whatever? This would be very interesting for me.
Jutta, I think that's spot on. That's exactly yesterday why I raised this question, and I threw it in the group as well. How can we recognize premature geoparks? I'm referring here to obvious things, the weak management, the strange names, for example, a very weak geology, clearly not being able to demonstrate their geology, but issues with the border is clearly one of them. And the example that quickly came up there in the presentation of Guy, but it was actually one of the slides that I had prepared, was exactly one of those points when we saw at the level of application that there was something odd with the boundaries. We managed to get back to this site, and they came up with an adapted boundary and an adapted application file in time for the application, in time for the intergovernmental check. Once the boundary is out for the intergovernmental check, then it sticks. So it's a very short lapse of time that we have to see if there is something odd or not. But that's certainly something that we try to do. It's not always possible. Sometimes I remember with another geopark, it was actually only at the time of the mission that they saw that the boundaries were cutting through municipalities. We almost have to look into Google Earth and Google Maps to see where exactly the boundaries of the municipalities are. That's a work that as a secretariat you cannot ask. But there are more obvious things like the one that Guy mentioned. If you see that an island has all the different islands as different boundaries, not showing a single unified boundary, that is something that we should have spotted before. Now, the question is, even if you spot such a thing, can you say we're not sending our evaluators? Basically, you're doing them a favor because you know that it's going to end with a deferral or with a rejection. Why bother paying these experts going through all the hassle, knowing that it's going to have a negative outcome? The statutes then say that we can refuse to send an evaluation if we think that the application is weak. It's a little bit of a challenge that we have right now, and I'm going to have that discussion as well with the council in the next coming weeks, because there is one application that is clearly not being able to build up their file to the extent needed. What do we do in such a case? And I think it's an interesting question. There's things that we can see up front, but then the next question is that strong enough? I think it will require a little bit of a discussion with the actual country and with the actual geopark to see what they think about it. But for the time being, we don't really have an argument to say we're not going there because it's not going to make it. But thanks for those points, because that's actually exactly what we are confronted with right now. I see that Martina has her hand up as well. Thank you, Jutta.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to add because, yeah, again, we have many time discussions which are actually produced by the situation that we have statutes. We have 2 decades or more of experiences of our functioning geoparks, how the bottom-up principle is working in various continents and countries. And there are some unwritten rules, some rules which are not written in statutes, and they are reflecting the experience with the functioning of our philosophy of the bottom-up principle and other principles. And this is something we want to share, we want to apply, but it's like learning by errors, of course, and it can produce kind of feelings, non-transparency or other things. On the other hand, if you have bottom-up principle, it doesn't mean it's about, let's say, participatory management of the geopark, but it is not telling that if you have some, let's say, principles or criteria which are voluntarily accepted by given geopark, that you don't need to follow them. You are bottom up, but you voluntarily agree to join some philosophy and some principles. And it's logical that they are like precising these rules and these principles, because it's not easy, the bottom up principle. So this is not the dictate, but this is a reflection of learning, and that's just advice for each territory. So I would stress the work of the national level, I mean national fora of geopark, not only evaluators, should have this kind of seminars, because exactly national fora can share all these unwritten rules with the teams of aspiring geoparks. And I think the national fora could help a little bit to make workshops and various capacitation for teams of aspiring geoparks to understand better all these rules. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Martina. I see that it's a bit what you're saying aligned with the exchanges that I see here on the chat as well. We have, of course, our checklist with our 101 questions that come with an explanatory note. And in that explanatory note, we explain as well what is exactly meant, because that document, that explanatory note and the questions are exactly to explain these, I wouldn't say unwritten rules, but it's a little bit trying to explain the logic from the statutes in an understandable manner. Maybe we have to provide some additional examples on that explanatory note. Maybe there are a few lessons learned in the meanwhile that we can add to that. And I'm open to have maybe a separate section on boundary issues or more important issues to look out for. But I wouldn't want to start mushrooming different guides and information sections. So if we can concentrate it under these 101 questions and the explanatory note, I think that would make sense. I was checking something else here. Yeah, Kirsten said it's important as well that an aspiring geopark that they check with the secretariat. I think this is true, and I don't know why it doesn't happen more often, but that they check with us in the very early stages while they're building on a geopark, that they reach out either to GGN or to us or to anyone else that can guide them a little bit in this process and can have actually an upfront check to see if what they're working on, if it makes sense. It happens that they're asking us, well, we don't have all the municipalities, what do we do? Or would like to include that site, but not that site. So I think it is not bad if this happens indeed at the very early stage. Thanks, Martina. Chris, you raise your hand. Chris, we don't hear you. We don't hear you. I think you're or mimic or your mic is not on. Nope, still not. Still not. Nope. Is it me?
Move to someone, go to someone else while I work it out.
No, you just did work it out. I don't know what happened, but now we hear you.
Apologies. I don't know whether we have really got to the bottom of Hartmut's question yet. Are we saying that in assessing new geoparks, they must have government administrative boundaries? Because I can think of plenty of examples where a biogeographic approach to the boundary could be recognized by local people and local organizations and by local and national government. I understand all the Italian geoparks, for instance, are based on national parks or natural parks or something similar. Whilst there are all sorts of issues with making sure there is a good clarity of presentation between a national park and a geopark, those biogeographic boundaries are often very well understood by the community and have national and local political recognition and are clearly marked on the ground. Are we saying that we shouldn't be accepting those and we should only be accepting things that have local government boundaries? And if that's the case, what do we do with revalidations where existing boundaries that might have been in the network for a long time have a biogeographic boundary that doesn't just conform with local government boundaries? So are we only taking the new ones that do, and what about the old ones? I hope that makes sense.
Somebody wishes to answer? Guy, Nicholas?
Well, okay, Chris, you are right. I mean, we are facing a story. It's 20 years of story of development of geopark now. So it's true that we have some oldest geopark which were created not corresponding with about norms that were created after. But in the past already, we have tried to speak with the geopark and arrange a border. So I don't know all the situation. Probably you are right. There are still old geopark, earliest geopark, which are not fully fooling these norms. But what can we do about it, Chris? What can we do? It's just looking the story and looking that it's an evolution of our technique, of our contest, and well, the important at this stage, after 20 years, is that the geopark are good functioning geopark. We can't be perfect, I guess.
Evolution's a good thing. I think we'd all agree. And as long as we're not going back and changing the past and making those old geoparks change their boundaries, that makes sense. But evolution's, you know, we're all in favor of that, surely.
I agree. Evolution, good.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chris. Thanks for bringing that up. Azir.
Yes, thank you, Christoph. Just a very short comment about the boundaries. I do understand why the boundaries are chosen based on administrative pre-existing limits, because we are talking about local development. And I do also understand that the geology of the place should not control the boundary of the geopark. But I also agree with something that Nicolas said yesterday, which is that we would, and I strongly believe in that, we would be nothing different if we don't pay special attention to the unique thing that makes us different, which is the geological heritage. In that sense, I do believe that the boundaries of the geopark should somehow reflect a kind of geological coherence. Because at the end of the day, working in a geopark for local development, doing geoeducation, geotourism, geoconservation, all kinds of these things, we need to have a good storytelling. And that storytelling should be coherent. So I would suggest that this geological coherence should be also considered. It's not a question, it's just a short comment that sometimes I can see a very coherent geoparks from the administrative point of view, but not that coherence from the geological point of view. So I think it's a matter of keeping the balance.
May I comment something? I totally agree with you, Asher. But exactly this is the history of our network. I would like to remind that when an application came a few years ago from Sicily at the flanks of Etna, with an administrative limit, the Bureau at that time didn't accept that, exactly for the reason that you said now. Respecting administrative limits in any case does not mean that we don't respect the expression of the geological heritage that we have in a territory. But we should add as many municipalities as possible in order to present, for example, a volcano as a whole. So I think we all stay at the same idea, including inside the administrative limits that we can choose every time, of course, the integrity of our geological heritage. Otherwise, it does not make any sense, because the basement for our geopark is without any adapted geological heritage. So absolutely, you are right. And in any case, I don't want just to clarify, because I didn't want to have any misunderstanding on that. We follow administrative limits, which include the integrity of the geological heritage structures. You are absolutely right.
Thanks, Nicholas, for this addition. I think this is a very rich discussion. I see nobody has raised his hand. I don't know, Guy, Nicholas, people, if you want to have a short break now, or shall we do the very short quiz right now? And then maybe we have a quick break before we have the presentations of the experts. How do you see it? Because we're a little bit behind schedule. Well, behind schedule is not the word, but
maybe we can do the quiz now. It's just 15 minutes, okay. And I think just few words on the kids on the quiz is a new version of the quiz that we have done very quickly. So we are using this evaluator training also to after to implement the quiz. We have tried to find a more light formula, sometimes light, funny, and we have reduced the question. We have only 57, and you can, I think, you can do it in 15 minutes.
So if there is no particular burning things, maybe is there anything Guy wants to say, or somebody else who quickly wants to say something about the quiz? Yeah.
Yeah. I received the global result. I think that all the notes are between at this stage it's 66 quiz done, and the note is from 38 to 57, and the more percentage is 54. So very few mistakes. But what was interesting for me is when we have an important percentage of wrong mistake, and I think that we can spend few minutes to clarify, to understand. So one important is a point 50, is a question 52, where we have 22 answers which are wrong. And this concerns the selling of inside the selling of geological materials, the situation where there is a traditional practice existing and from centuries, and there was two answers possible. He's saying that is forbidden to sell geological object, and the second, the good one, was understanding the traditional value and history of this selling, and suggest to prepare a report explaining the history of this handicraft and presenting to the council, which is a normal procedure. And this is not clear for more than 20% of our colleagues. And it's important to clear. There is around 15% of wrong question about the logo. And we have 26% on the question 6-7 about the limit. This is at this stage, and looking quickly, the more important global mistake done in the questionnaire. Except that I think the result is very good in general, because a peak, the highest point at 54 for a huge majority is very good.
Thank you very much, Guy, for this quick debrief. I think that in the terms of the boundaries, maybe there may have been a misunderstanding in the formulation of the question as well. But if we set that straight, it may become clear. For the selling of, this question 52, I think it's a very relevant one. And then for the logo, maybe we will also put a separate section on our website on the use of logo, because I see as well from the number of questions that I'm getting that this is still a reason for confusion. Thanks, Pat. Colleagues, it's 20:04 for me. We have 40 more minutes. If that is okay, I would suggest that we move to the short presentations that we've asked a number of experts to bring in order for them to share our experience. Constantina, can you maybe bring the presentation, because some of them prepared a short PowerPoint, if you can share the screen. And I believe we're starting with Jiangping. Before you start, Jiangping, a very quick question. Chris, do you have to leave very soon now, or am I wrong?
You mean me, Christoph, or Chris Woodley
No,
Stewart?
Chris Woodley Stewart. I know that he was about to leave because he had another presentation to give. Does he want to speak first, or?
Okay, I'm in room.
No, I'm just checking because I don't hear him. It could be that he has left already.
I think he's left already, Christoph. I've checked the participants.
Okay, let's then move on. Sorry to interrupt then, Jiangping. Over to you. Floor is yours.
I'm very honored to be here with all of you. I'm just talking about something. If you have the mission in China, maybe you know, China has the largest members of the UNESCO Global Geoparks. We already have 41 with a very wide distribution and different geological setting and diverse geoheritage, long cultural history with abundant both intangible and intangible heritage. Most of the geoparks got very strong support from local government and the local people. Many of these sites, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you. Sure.
Okay. Most of them derive from the very famous tourism destinations, so with very high reputation, so with many visitors. So generally, they have relatively complete management system and good infrastructure. Next. For your morphology features, compared with maybe other areas in the world, Chinese geomorphology quite complex and different place to place. So you need to very careful before you go to the geopark and know about the geopark locations. Because if you some geopark may be in the very high mountain areas, maybe sometimes it may be a big challenge for some evaluators. I suggest the evaluators must get basic information and full communication with the geopark. Next. For example, you need to prepare the clothes, equipment, shoes, and they have maybe many stepways. Some stepways maybe have the many thousand steps from bottom to the top. Next. So the weather. The wider distribution, because from the north to south, you have maybe close large area. Some geopark may be still in the winter, but some geopark in South China maybe in the summer. So you need to know the weather exactly before your mission. Next. For preparation for the mission in China, special attention by the national high level and the local government on the every mission. So they will prepare a very detailed itinerary, and also many activities will be show you. But you need to maybe take enjoying this. Okay. Next. About the communication. East China UNESCO Global Geoparks own a quite strong management body generally, but most of the geopark managers are very familiar with UNESCO Global Geoparks statutes and operational guidelines, and know almost everything about the geoparks. But language may be a big problem. During the mission, maybe they need help in the language help. So you need to pay attention to leave more time to exchange and maybe scoring. Next. Food. Maybe you are very familiar with, because it's a very long tradition in China. They have many different delicious foods in different areas. So you can enjoy it as you, if you love this. Next. Yes, China is an amazing country. So I think make a mission in China, maybe give you a very special impression. And but I think China has the largest number of UNESCO Global Geoparks in the world, but do not mean the best. Different geoparks are facing different situations. Some geoparks are still maybe waiting for you very constructive suggestions. Please do tell them, and also exchange your idea, sharing with your experience with the geoparks. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you very much, Zhang Ping. I think this was very useful with over 40 geoparks. You're, of course, the country with the most of the geoparks, and many of the evaluators, sooner or later in your life, you're going to be appointed as an evaluator to one of the geoparks in your country. And I think indeed it's important that we keep those points in mind. Thank you very much for that. Maybe we keep the questions and the reactions for the end, if that is okay. Chris, I think you're back. You're connected. Before we go to Van. Van, would you agree if Chris has one slide, just the one point about governance to explain? Would you agree that he comes in between?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. Konstantina, could you scroll? Yeah, exactly. Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. thank you. I have another commitment to present somewhere else. Sorry. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? No. I did have a slide, but it's not there. The text isn't showing.
No, the text doesn't seem on.
Dear Chris and dear Christoph, this is the presentation that we have received.
No, I sent the slide separately. Let me see if we can bring it up.
Sorry.
It's just one slide, Constantine, on governance. Is it not appearing in the list?
No, this is we have only these 2 slides.
Okay, let me see.
Give me a second, I might be able to find it myself.
Yeah, maybe I'll find it here. Oh, I got it. Can I share?
Okay, that's a huge help. Thank you. What I would quickly say is the other slide has a link on it, so hopefully we'll be able to send that out to participants. Thank you very much, Constantine and Christoph. I'm Chris Woodley-Stewart. I'm from the North Pennines Geopark in England. We've been a geopark since 2003. If we think back to Guy's presentation, he used a really important word quite a lot of the time, the word analyze. And when it comes to a lot of the reports that I've read, we often describe more than we analyze. And when it comes to things like interpretation and education, we've probably all got some good thoughts about how we analyze the effectiveness of that, but we can analyze governance too. And as several speakers have identified, governance and management issues can be a primary weakness in evaluating, in an evaluation, or indeed a revalidation if governance has perhaps changed. So I want to come back to Guy's use of the word analyze, because it's incredibly important. There might be some cultural differences between different parts of the world, between different countries in how we approach governance. Some may have the involvement of elected politicians a lot more than we do, for instance, here. But there are some principles of good governance that hold true in geoparks wherever you are. And I just want to quickly go through those because we can use them as an analytical tool, just in the same way that we might analyze interpretation or education and its effectiveness. So is it participatory? Does the governance system promote the engagement of its members? Is it really engaging, especially with local communities and indigenous communities, as we've been hearing? So is it genuinely participatory? Does it seek consensus, or does it seek to command and control? Is it genuinely democratic? Are there really clear lines of responsibility? Cesar, who's on this call from Uruguay, and I evaluated somewhere last year where, without being able to apply these kind of criteria to their governance, it looked fine, but actually there were two people at the top of the structure who couldn't be removed and could veto the decisions that were made by all the rest of the structure. So it wasn't properly accountable with clear lines of responsibility. And so is it transparent? Are there really clear processes of how people make decisions and how people are appointed? And are those appointments clear and open, and can everyone see the way it works? And if you wanted to become part of that system, would there be a way to apply to be so, if you were from an appropriate organization? Is it responsive? So have we got strategies and plans? Fine, but are they reviewed regularly? How does that governance structure enable the geopark to take new opportunities and to do them in a strategic way? So it's not just grabbing at everything that comes along, but thinking, well, for these reasons, this is a better opportunity than that was. So we're going to go that way. So is the governance system responsive enough to take new opportunities? Is it efficient and effective? Is it democratic, but not being overly complex? Someone said to me last year, we could never be too democratic. Well, there is an argument for that, but you may end up with a situation where there are so many decision-making processes that nothing ever gets done. Crucially, and I think there are some cultural differences here, is there a good division between the governance side of things, perhaps politicians and others who discuss things like agreeing the overall finance package, the assessment of risk, and the operational side, which does the work in the field. And wherever you are in the world, it's not really good practice to have those people who are responsible for the governance taking matters that decisions that professional staff should be taking. Is it equitable and inclusive? Obviously, is it fair and is it just? And is its membership broad enough? And importantly, does it follow the rule of law? Because it may be that a system that's been set up isn't appropriate for running a geopark. And what we'd add to the rule of law there is that system in compliance with the GGN Charter. So these things can be used as a tool to analyze the governance of a place, not just describe it and say, yes, they've got some, but actually analyzing whether it's fit for purpose using some established principles of good governance. We had an Interreg project a few years ago led by Artur Saar, who I can actually see on my screen, one of only 5 people I can see on my screen, but I can see Artur. We had an Interreg project where we produced a guide for new and aspiring geoparks. It's a web-based tool. I've provided a link to it in the other slide that we had. And I've written a chapter in there on governance and on management, and it gives a little bit more detail about these principles of good governance and about management in geoparks. There are no right answers, but there are some good analytical tools that you can use. And I strongly recommend this approach to you of using these principles of good governance when you're in the field, to not just describe the governance of a geopark, but to really analyze it. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for sharing this, and then apologies for not bringing up the right slide.
No, that's all right.
We'll share the right one, because indeed the link that you referred to is this toolbox that gives indeed a little bit more of an explanation about it. I see that Guy raised his hand, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Chris for his presentation. Of course, Chris, who is against what you say, but this is totally theoretic. I mean, how in the field, explain me, you can check consensus oriented, you can check the democracy, how you can check that the process are fair and just. We are staying 3 days in a territory, okay? We are driven by the local politics, by the local system. And you want that somebody show you that we are not in a democratic system, that the process is not fair. How do you do that? You are speaking about an audit which needs months to go inside the system. I think theoretically we agree on principle, but on the field is impossible. And we have to respect also the place where we are and the political system in place. I'm working in Vietnamese days, you know. I don't think my colleague, I don't know, my colleague Vietnamese can speak. I mean, that's important is that the work is done, understood. But analyzing the level of democracy of a territory, I think that is very far from the duty of our expert. Really. So
I'm not sorry. I'm not talking about the democracy of a whole territory. I'm talking about the democracy of the management and governance structure of a geopark, not about the whole territory. The management and governance structure of a geopark. And I would argue that if you do enough work in advance and you question people properly about their governance, you can get a good sense of whether the systems of appointment to that governance structure are fair and whether they are reasonable. I'm not asking anybody to assess the democratic structures of an entire country. Is that management structure itself that you can see an organogram of, is that operating along the principles of good governance? That's what we're talking about.
Okay, Chris, to be clear, you know that I'm living from more or less 10 years in Asia. The majority of the geoparks that we have here, and I'm not speaking only with China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and others are directly managed by the political system, by local government, provincial government, and so on. So, and it represents a huge quantity of geoparks. So what do you want to do? I mean, the management structure is part of the governmental structure.
I've made my point.
Let's not make this overly lengthy. I think there's just a number of healthy principles, and I think Chris made it clear that this has to be seen, of course, in the context. I think people understand that assessing this in Germany or in China, it's a different context. But it's just a number of principles to keep in the back of your mind if you're looking at the soundness of a management body. I think there was nothing more than that. Artur, over to you.
Yeah, this is right. Is actually my point, because this is a very good theoretical concept, but in effect, in the practices, if we apply these in a mission, first, in my opinion, more than 50% of the UNESCO Global Geoparks in this moment are in trouble. So we need to stop and think, wow. And I'm talking even about many geoparks in Europe and even in the United Kingdom, for sure. So we need to look at this, and in second hand, in the practice, we need that the evaluators team have every time or a manager or an economist in order to help those that are not have this kind of specific skills. And for sure, a mission is not only for 3-4 days. We will need to spend more time. This kind of, to me, as an evaluator, I have a concern in every mission about the formal existence of the management structure in accordance the national laws. So if it is published in the official organ, the journal or other national document, the creation of the management structure, and like yesterday, Aniela Loya from Italy referred, for example, in the Italian case, the majority of the geoparks coincides with the national parks, so it's impossible to differentiate the annual budget from the national park from the part that belongs to the geopark, and even with the staff. And well, I think that this is a very important issue. It's important to take care with the governance, but to put this on the road could be a Homeric task. So it's important to discuss this, but in this moment, I'm not seeing a way to operationalize this properly.
I think, or can I just come back on that? I think, as Christoph said to you, what we've presented here is some principles, some analytical tools that you can have at your disposal. And at the moment, it's a free-for-all with everybody applying their own different kinds of thinking. And so there is no general guidance at the moment around governance, because there are no suggested principles. These are
the network evolves, of course, with new ideas that brings new approaches. Of course, I understand.
These are things we can lean on. We might not be able to apply them all, but there are things that we can lean on in the field, whereas we currently don't have much to lean on.
Can we agree just on the fact that this is just a few handy guidelines to keep in the back of your head if you're looking at it, as long as you recognize that, of course, you're working in different contexts. It's a global network with all its particularities, and that's why we asked as well the different people from Latin America, from China, from Asia to explain their context as well, so that evaluators are aware of it when they go and visit geoparks in that territory. I wouldn't want it to dominate the discussion here now, because it's just one point as
a point I made that may have been willfully misheard, but yes, thank you.
Thanks. Bobby's, was it on this or?
Yes, it was just on this, and it has to do with what I wrote in the chat, that actually most geoparks are doing management. In most cases, the geoparks are coordinating many other partners. If it was just one unique structure who has the complete management of an area, then this totally could be applied very easy after some exercise. But if you have many partners who are acting and performing activities, then it's becoming very complicated to analyze and have a clear picture. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Bobbies. Thanks, colleagues. Maybe we can move, Konstantina, if you agree, we can move to this presentation. Van, if you're okay, to explain a little bit the context of what people can expect when they go and visit a geopark in Asia Pacific. We've heard already Jiang Ping. We would be glad to hear your point of view as well, any lessons that you've learned that you can share with us.
Okay, Christoph, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, hello, I'm Van from Vietnam, Southeast Asian country. I have done 10 evaluation revalidation missions, 5 of which were in Asian countries like China, Korea, and Iran. But I also attended some GGN events and in Asian countries such as China, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and of course, Vietnam. I was quite fortunate to be able to accompany many senior evaluators such as Atmut Esser, very punctual, Andreas Suller, Babis, who knows everything, Pablo Rivas, yes, very experienced Spanish. So I learned a lot of lessons from them. But there was not such a seminar like this a few years ago. And I think the organization of such a seminar is a very good initiative by the UNESCO Secretariat and GGN Secretariat. Thank you very much. So there are some lessons that I have learned. First of all, the Asian countries, except some very big, very large superpowers like China and India, most of Asian countries are very small, and culturally they are very diverse. So I fully agree with what Babis said before, that I need to be very adaptive, flexible, and open to difference. Second point is that when I do a mission to a country, the host country try to be very hospitable, and they will offer us a lot of food and drink. I can eat a lot of food, but I cannot drink much, and I need to be self-control and sober in the next morning to be ready for another travel. And the same applies to weather and climate conditions. I remember that recently I made a mission to Iran, and then Professor Nakada and Yang Moon also went there, and before they went, we had a very good exchange. What is the weather, climate condition, what is the rule, etc. And of course, the same applies to customs. For example, I will not be able to hug and kiss an Asian lady if I don't know that I am allowed to. Okay, and also, for example, when I made a mission to Iran, as a rule, I need to buy an insurance, travel insurance, and you know that because of the embargo, no company sell that travel insurance to me, and in the end, I had to ask my Iranian friends to do it, to do that for me. And I would like to take this opportunity to tell all of you that Iranian friends, they are really very peaceful, very friendly, and I didn't have any problem with them when I did that mission. Okay, Asian geoparks, maybe except Japan, are strongly backed by governmental authorities. So I am more than often overwhelmed by the welcoming ceremonies, cultural shows and performance, etc., which involve a huge number of local people. And if you can do something in response, then it would be very much appreciated. I could not do that, and I really regret. And of course, as he already mentioned, I need to be prepared for jet lag. Okay, Tina, please, next slide. Of course, I need to study on the documents provided and the guidelines for evaluation revalidation. But because I don't know everything, and evaluated revalidated geopark is really perfect. When I serve as a council member, I'm able to read some reports, and I noticed that there are only very few UNESCO Global Geoparks which are nearly perfect, and which in the end the revalidators don't know what to recommend. But I think the recommendations are necessary, and I focus mostly on few critical issues, such as, for example, the geological heritage of international significance. Where is it? Other heritage values rather than geological, for example, cultural or biodiversity. So I'm really very happy if a dossier very well explained about geological heritage of international significance, and I nearly get mad if the dossier does not do it well. So another issue is that if the aspiring geopark has a strong management board and sufficient and long-term financial support, But what is a strong management board is quite difficult to answer. And I learned a very good lesson when recently I went to a revalidation mission to Gyeongsong, UNESCO Global Geopark in Korea. And I see several models which I have to accept. Of course, as I said before, we need to be open to differences. And at the Gyeongsong UNESCO Global Geopark, where the geopark covers one whole district. And I saw that the management board consists of very few staff, but the whole district authority stays behind that management board, and actually on the activities of the geopark is done by the district authorities machine, so I think it is also a very good model that we need to understand and accept. And I think in this case, the more important is the results. No matter the management board, no matter it doesn't matter how big or small, but if the result is good, then we have to accept. Geopark visibility, yes, of course, networking and community and local indigenous involvement, because coming from Vietnam, where ethnic diversity is a very big, very clear and very colorful. So we here from Vietnam, we pay a lot of attention to indigenous knowledge and indigenous involvement. Next slide, please, Tina. Okay, and last slide, I would like to talk a little bit on preparing reports and make recommendations. It's very essential for me to take note every day in the evening when we come back to the hotel, because I will forget quickly everything in the next morning. And it is very essential to prepare and finalize the report during the first 1 or 2 weeks after the mission, because otherwise I also will forget. And it is quite difficult and challenging to prepare recommendations, but I believe I can do it if I come to a geopark to evaluate or to revalidate with peace, goodwill, friendship, and learning and sharing attitudes, with adaptive, flexible, and open to different attitudes, and paying attention only just to too few critical issues. I don't need to be very comprehensive, very meticulous like Guy. I don't need 10 or 15 recommendations, but maybe 1 to 3 is a little bit too little. So 5 or 6 may be a good number. And I would like to take this opportunity also to thank other senior evaluators, revalidators that I had opportunities to work with, such as Marie-Louise, Atusa, Christine Rangnes, and some others, and especially Himati, who I learned a lot from. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Van, and we learn a lot from you. I think it's very much appreciated that you share this with us now. Really, it's because I think it builds on several of the things that were discussed in the past 2 days. And indeed, it's a very diverse region. It's hard to fit it in one particular format. I think we will hear this from Helga as well when she speaks about Latin America. There are several similarities in that. So thanks for having shared this. I know that we're getting really late, but it still would be very useful if we could hear from some other speakers, and if I can just get a little bit more of your time. I know that for people in the East, it's getting very late. But Constantino, I think we had a short presentation as well. Would it be from Kristen now? Oh, Andreas, okay. Andreas, if you're still with us.
Yeah. Okay.
We're listening.
Okay.
We're all here to you.
You included this, what I wanted to tell in your presentation yesterday, but I can do it now in a very short way because time is running. So from my experience, it's always sometimes challenging, but is an item we have to address is the administrative structure of the geopark. And as you told yesterday in your presentation, often geoparks are not single managed bodies. They are often part of a superordinated organizational scheme, like a nature reserve, a national park, or whatever, something else. So so we have to, this is sensitive, and we have to check this, and we have to ask for clarifications by the geopark staff. What is the exact way how they are working in the geopark? And there was two essential questions. One is, does the people, the staff, which is given to the geopark, do they have some independent decision-making competences? And is there a certain budget allocated to geopark projects? And this, if this is sufficiently explained, then there might be the possibility to accept this. Another part is we have addressed this also in the last 2 days, the visibility in geoparks, especially the visibility in aspiring geoparks. And it was also displayed today that despite all using the technical things, the social media, you should also have some information panels and signboards in the field to give the visitors a direct view, a direct impression, a visual impression that you are inside a geopark. And something which we heard today several times. So talk to the people to get some idea if the geopark is not only an activity of 1 or 2 persons. Try to get some information that you can detect, that you can feel the spirit in the area, and hopefully there is a huge amount of people who are supporting the geopark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for sharing these points. And indeed, I think it's something that will require a little bit of additional explanation. But what you explained is when there is an overlap with a nature park, it was discussed yesterday.
Yeah.
I see it's still very often reason of confusion. I've had a few reactions, I must say, as well after this. So we will have to follow up a little bit on this to make sure that there is no doubt and that there is a little bit more clarity in the situation. Thanks for bringing that up. Helga, over to you. We're going to South America.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I will try to go very fast on this. I know everybody's late today. So I bring only one slide, and following the key advantages and challenges in which are facing Latin American aspiring geoparks and a lot of projects. Of course, Latin America has an outstanding geological, natural, and cultural heritage that is no problem for the geoparks. Also, they have most of the time very good relationship with universities. So the inventories, geological inventories, natural heritage inventories, and cultural are very well done. And that is not an issue at all. We have all these cosmovision of the indigenous community that it is very valuable in the aspiring geoparks. most of the time they have a very great community involvement, as well as a great opportunity to develop sustainable tourism, because most of these areas that are arising as aspiring geopark are not very touristic areas at all. So they are starting with this concept of geotourism that is very important, because they are starting very well and with the concept of sustainable tourism. That means that they also generate geoproducts, everything in this case is well. Even education is a great opportunity, because in most of the geoparks, they have a great relation with the education system. So education in the territory, primary school, secondary school, is always a good concept for developing in the Latin American and Caribbean geoparks. So from me, these are the key points that are positive, and most of the time are very good. But of course, Latin America has challenges, okay? And here is more or less the same that we have been talking about. The UNESCO Global Geoparks program is not very well known yet in the whole Latin American Caribbean region. And that means a challenge for those territories that wants to become a geopark, because they not always find it easy to make the appropriate atmosphere from the authorities, from the local communities, to make it happen easily. That's why many times territories spend a lot of time, a lot of years, making this option to become an aspiring geopark. And this is also not only because they haven't found easily support, but also the staff of this aspiring geopark haven't got enough information before starting with the dream of becoming a UNESCO Global Geopark. So many times they haven't received appropriate courses or information of even reading the UNESCO Global Geopark guidelines. And this is really a problem when they are not very well prepared and start preparing and using resources and making people enthusiastic with the concept, and is a misunderstood concept. Another issue is, and we have been talking about this in another name, is the bottom-up approach, okay? And this is where is the idea of the territory to become a geopark. We have mostly two big examples coming from the local authorities, that is an up to bottom approach. And the second one is mostly coming from the community related with the universities. So that is bottom up approach. But what is happening that they are not easily come together in the two parts. So again, to become a bottom up approach is always sometimes difficult, and it takes time, of course, but they have to find out exactly middle term to be all together and to make the geopark in function. And sometimes we go as evaluators to the geopark and we can find the up-down geopark and the bottom-up geopark without any authorities here. So that is an issue. And of course, this is obviously seen in the governance, okay? The governance, because of this issue I mentioned before, is not always reflecting the bottom-up approach. And definitely coming back to the discussion we have had later, for my personal point of view, I'm not there to evaluate a government, a local government, and how they are making the sustainable development or making economic development for the community. I'm there to see how a community with the authorities and all the other stakeholders, education, whatever, they are making together to make a sustainable development under the UNESCO Global Geoparks guidelines. So this is very important to be clear, because sometimes it's a confusion point. And of course, they have to have a management staff, a management body with all the people there. They have to have the budget. And again, this is sometimes an issue, because the 4 years management plan and the 4 years budget is not always appropriate according to the legal framework and the political situation in the country. So we have to be very aware of this, and sometimes it's a challenge for aspiring geoparks. Another issue, again, because we have been talking about this for a long time, is the administrative limits. Of course, they want to include all their geological heritage, natural heritage, and cultural heritage inside the geopark. But sometimes administrative borders make these geoparks to make larger areas that make, again, to work along more to accomplish with all the situation that we have been discussing, appropriate amount of geosites, involvement of the community, etc. That means that you will find many times in Latin America that you have big geoparks, because administrative limits are very big. So that is a challenge for Latin American and Caribbean region. And finally, networking. Is not, sometimes is weaknesses from the aspiring and project geoparks, because, again, because of the first point, and I don't know, but sometimes they haven't got enough networking regionally and internationally. Okay, I think that I made it very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helga. I think we all agree this was very, very useful. I think it's indeed, it's a very particular region. You're not very many geoparks still. I mean, even if we see that it's on the roll and it's increasing, and every year there's more and more in Latin America. I think for a starting geopark, it is hard in Latin America to have actually a real reference. And I see that Patricio is here reacting. Brazil is somewhat the exception, that we see the last years they come with several very strong geoparks, I must say, because it all comes together, what you're saying, the community engagement, the university, and they get the government support. So you get a certain visibility within the country that triggers then other geoparks to join the network. And in other countries, it's a little bit harder. And I think as an evaluator, you have to be aware of this as well, that if you're assessing a geopark there, very often people have been working for years and years to be where they are at the moment of applying, and very often they have indeed this very strong community engagement that we have to be aware of. Thanks a lot for that, Helga. We're moving to Alicia.
Yes, here I am. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Oh, thank you so much. So, good afternoon, good evening to all. I promise you I will be brief because it's too late, and also because several colleagues have already underlined what I'm going to say. But first of all, let me thank the organizer of the course, because I think it's crucial for all of us to share what we have experienced as evaluators during the missions in order to improve our action and to make the evaluation and the revalidation mission very effective and useful for African territories. I have prepared a few slides to, clarify some issues I have experienced during my missions in different continents of the world. As several speakers before me have already expressed, I think that the first tip is to be well prepared, because our work for preparing the mission is fundamental. Reading carefully the documents the Geopark provide us is a crucial point of our mission. So do not hesitate to ask more details if the documents are not totally complete or if something is not clear to all. I think that the more you know about the territory, let me say, the easier the mission is going to be. Please, the next. Santina, thank you. After checking the agenda, if necessary, do not hesitate to ask for more details or to verify with the Geopark staff for any possible modification if you think something of interest is missing in it. Because I think a comprehensive visit will be very helpful to have a clear framework of the area you are visiting. The next, please. I think also it's crucial to give voice to the local communities and stakeholders. So look for a contact and ask what more the Geopark could be doing to support the local communities. It can be interesting to ask them if they are satisfied with the support they are receiving from the Geopark and what they would like to ask to the Geopark for the improvement of its support. It happened to me that a local guide was a little bit worried about the sustainability during a guided visit. And she explained that especially during the high seasons, she was worried about the acoustic impact and she would have at her disposal a system of headphone for all the tourists. This suggestion was later discussed with the Geopark staff and became a recommendation in the report. The next, please. Make sure that your suggestions are not in contrast with national and local rules. It's very important during the final meeting with the staff at the Geopark to be sure that what we are going to suggest for the improvement of the management of the Geopark are pragmatic action, but above all, they are not in contrast with the national and regional laws so that they can be effectively realized or in order for them to be realized. For example, I've experienced some situation in which the previous recommendation asked for the setup of huge panels along the motorway to increase the visibility of the Geopark, but the national rules did not allow this kind of installation. So it was a nonsense, let me say, to give this kind of recommendation. The next one, please. Take time to explain geoheritage. It can happen that local representatives misunderstand the value of the geological heritage of the area and the tools to enhance it. So do not hesitate to take time to explain why and how to protect and to promote it. It happened to me that a local politician discussing about the geological value of an outcrop proposed to set up a rock shop for selling small pieces of rocks coming out from the outcrop. It was useful at that moment to take time to explain to him that the geological heritage must be enhanced in a different way. And it was possible to find different ways to promote it and to use it as a trigger for geotourism purposes. And fortunately, the management showed good understanding about the issue. And the last slide, please. The last suggestion I want to put to your attention reflects, I think, exactly the spirit of the network. What I want to say is that the missions are also a very good exercise for the evaluators. When we are visiting a geopark that is working well, you can be inspired for action to put in place also in your geopark when you come back home. This is exactly in the spirit of the network that was born to create bridges between people and their territories. So I think to share experience with us with the aim of creating a better future for our communities is a priority for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alessia, for these takeaways. I think this is very, very to the point as well. And listening to every voice, and you're not just going there to explain and to teach, but also to be open or receptive and see what you can learn from the whole process. Thanks for sharing that. Kirsten, I know that you had not too much time. I'm not sure if you're still connected, but if you are, we're really looking forward to your presentation as well.
Hi, Christoph. Can everybody hear? Can everybody hear me?
Sure, loud and clear.
Great, thank you. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. So my name is Kirsten Lemon. I am a geologist with the British Geological Survey, and I'm the chairperson of the UK Committee for UNESCO Global Geoparks, but also the vice chair for the Irish UNESCO Global Geoparks Committee. It's with my UK hat on that I'm going to primarily speak today. I'm going to give a little bit of insight as to some of the particular nuances of UNESCO Global Geoparks in the UK. This has been put together after some discussions with the other UNESCO Global Geoparks in the UK, and some common themes have developed after recent evaluations and revalidations. I'm then going to move on to another slide just to talk about my experience, I suppose, more globally as an evaluator. So first of all, if you're evaluating a geopark in the UK, be aware that the United Kingdom is made up of 4 different regions. We have England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. The worst thing you can do to somebody in the UK who is not from England is to call them English. So just be aware of that. There are 4 regions, and each of those regions has got different legislation. So be aware of the different cultural attitudes there are in each of those countries, and that there are very significant differences. Another thing to be aware of is that the UK UNESCO Global Geoparks do not get direct funding from the UK government. Each of our geoparks is very different. Each one has got a different operational model. The vast majority of them get their core funding from local government, but there is a whole plethora of different funding models that exist. The next point is probably one I should really stress, because I know the UK's departure from the EU has received a lot of attention in the media, not just in the UK and not just in Europe, but also globally. I want to reassure all of you that Brexit has not led to reduced capacity within the UK UNESCO Global Geoparks. A lot of us did get European funding, and that was primarily for project work. That was not for core funding, so it has not affected the way that we operate. European funding is still available to us, albeit in a reduced way, but we are still part of Europe as a continent, I should stress that. So we are all still Europeans, so do please bear that in mind. I also want to let you know that we do not have national geoparks. I know not every country has national geoparks, but some do. The UK does not. There are a number of reasons for that, primarily because we are very small, but also because currently we don't have the capacity from a financial and an administrative perspective to look after national geoparks. We do, however, have a number of aspiring UNESCO Global Geoparks with whom the UK Committee works very closely. All of our geoparks work in combination with various protected landscapes, and in fact, as you will have noted from the conversation earlier on, some of our existing geoparks share boundaries with those. We see this as a very significant bonus because it can often be a conduit for funding. They often share the same values and also bring a lot of protection for our geological heritage. So we do see these as a very important part of our UNESCO Global Geoparks. The UK also has extremely high levels of governance. We have got numerous levels of legislation, and we are very fond of process, procedure and systems. This is particularly apparent when it comes to procurement and health and safety. So if you're visiting a geopark in the UK, please be aware of that. We also, over the past number of years, have got a different attitude towards interpretation. I was delighted to see Guy talking about this earlier on. Interpretation is about so much more than signboards. We want to really enhance the natural landscape by telling people about it, but we don't want to ruin it by placing up lots of signboards. So there are various other ways interpretation is done, either be through totem poles that were discussed earlier on, or by guides, or by apps. It's not always done physically on the ground. Please be aware of that. We do not feel the need to have a sign at every single geopark site, and if we do, it will be probably very limited into the information that it holds. Then my last couple of comments. Number one, and this is really something that should be considered, because whenever it comes to looking at interpretation and any other kind of publication in the UK, we generally publish the vast majority of our material in English. This is not us being lazy, and this is not us being arrogant. It is simply because 95% of the people that come to visit our geoparks speak English. If we were to consider another language, The simple question is, what would it be? Because there is no one size fits all. It could be a vast number of different languages. There are exceptions, of course, because in Northern Ireland and in Scotland and in Wales, there are local languages. And in some cases, there's a legal requirement to put those languages in interpretation and in publications. But that is not expected outside of those areas. So please be aware of that. And then my final comment is really to talk about road signage. This has been a consistent issue within the UK about having entrance signage to our geoparks. The legislation surrounding erecting road signage on main trunk roads is extremely strict, and that is primarily because of road safety. I would say the vast majority of our geoparks do not have massive entrance signs, and those who do have them have gone through a very long process, and they will be existing and mature geoparks and not the aspiring ones. So please be aware of that. We do try and get around this in other ways by having enhanced visibility on sites or in interpretation centres, but the road signage on main trunk roads is particularly difficult. The last thing to say is that the geoparks in the UK are coordinated by the UK Committee for UNESCO Global Geoparks. That is really a voluntary committee. It's made up of the existing geoparks, the statutory environment organisations and a number of others. And we do that really in a very strong way and work very closely with the UK National Commission. But it's not a formal legal organisation, but that is how we work, and we think that is working well at the moment. So Constantina, I don't know whether you have my next slide or whether it made it to you in time. Haha, it's there, excellent. So these are just a few comments from my personal perspective, being an evaluator over the last number of years. And one thing that I haven't heard mentioned so far, and maybe somebody said it yesterday, was the female perspective. And I think this is really, really important, because although UNESCO and the GGN put gender equality at the top of their agenda, I'm very well aware that this is not the same across the world, and it differs from country to country. Be aware of the attitudes towards females in other countries, whether this be to do with patriarchal societies. This could be because of legal requirements with regards to dress code. It could also be to do with body language. Van mentioned about not hugging people in Asian countries who are women. I know whenever I visited Iran in particular, I was not allowed really to touch anybody, and that was really important for me to find out first. So be aware that females can sometimes be treated differently than men, and I don't necessarily mean that in a positive way. Now, that's just something to be aware of. My next comment is really just to be really aware of cultural differences. There's been various discussions over the last few hours about some of the way geoparks are approached in different countries. All of this is down to cultural differences. I think we should all adopt a pragmatic approach when it comes to assessing geoparks, except there are differences in other countries. I have done a good number of geoparks. The vast majority of them have not been in Europe. All of my evaluations and revalidations have been outside of Europe, and each one of them has taken different considerations. My picture on the right-hand side is really put up there just really to put a smile on people's face, but there is a serious side to that. The reason why I've got that picture is because I went to a park in Indonesia, and because I had blonde hair, people wanted to get their photograph taken with me. And that's lovely, that's very flattering, but also very overwhelming. So be appreciative of our differences and understand that that's what makes geoparks so amazing, is that we're all very, very different, but it's something that you should be aware of. This is not just outside of Europe, but within Europe as well, I should say. And my last comment on that stage is to be respectful. Don't immediately assume the way you're treated in one country is going to be the same in another, and be understanding and tolerant of that, and be open-minded. And just for a bit of light-hearted relief, I would say if you're going to be a geopark evaluator, please learn how to smile, because you'll be in more photographs than you will ever imagine you could ever be in. You will have a sore face as a result. Now, I'm going to finish on quite a serious point, and I don't know whether this has been mentioned already. A few people have mentioned about travelling to Iran, and this is not just applicable to Iran, but certain countries, if you visit them, it will have an impact on where you can visit according to the visa requirements. The example I'm giving is that if you've travelled to Iran, you're no longer eligible to visit the US under the ESTA. Now, that might not be a hardship for many people, but for me, I have a brother that lives in the United States that I cannot visit easily now as a result. I did not know that whenever I went to Iran, and if I had have known that, I'm not sure I would have gone. So I'm going to finish by saying my trip to Iran was one of the highlights of my entire life, and I genuinely mean that. But it's just be aware that whenever you're visiting these places, that do your homework, do your research, and be prepared. And I'll finish there.
Thanks a lot, Kristen. I think I have nothing to add, and thanks a lot for bringing this up. We had a direct discussion about the issue of the visa. That's indeed an important point. Iran is one of the countries. There's more countries that make it complicated to travel to the US afterwards, and I think we all have to be aware of that when we send people to on a mission. And then I thank you as well for bringing in here the female perspective. The fact that evaluators look at the fact how well women are actually integrated in the management, that's one point, but you being a woman as well, assessing sites everywhere in the world, I think it takes a separate approach, a different approach as well, and thanks for bringing this up. I see that we have another few slides, and I'm not sure if are these the slides from Christine?
Yeah, yes, they are.
Kristen, okay, thanks a lot. I know that we're a little bit in the extra time, but I would thank the people for staying on for a while. Thanks a lot, Kristen, for sharing this.
Yeah, thank you very much for allowing me. And now we are a little bit more back to some experiences and maybe some description of some situations that can occur, because it's not easy always, as Kirsten very nicely put. It's a lot of challenges also, and we are going there on behalf of serious issues, and I mean for people that really want the label of UNESCO Global Geoparks. So we need, of course, to be open-minded and do our best all the time. And my first example is, and I just note that the picture is not from the territory that I'm going to talk about. This is actually from a World Heritage Site in Norway, but we were going to visit a territory with a stunning landscape, really stunning. And from all the documents that we got, the geopark looked strong, very good connections between cultural heritage and the landscape. It was a good connection with the geoparks in the same country. The IUGS evaluations was not coherent. There were some different opinions on the quality of the geological heritage, so we were aware of that. But as always, in the preparation for our visit, we had really dedicated and, of course, as always, very nice people. So we went there. I went there with my colleague, where that was the first mission for this person. And we did some serious experiences that made it difficult for us, because when we arrived, the geopark was not visible in the territory at all. No panels, no really developed sites. We were shown one panel that were ready to be mounted, but it was just really a design. The geologist was not working in the geopark on a permanent basis, and it was easy for us to see that, to note that there were some disagreements between the geologist and the staff. Not a good situation, and maybe also reflecting a little bit the discrepancy in the IUGS comments or evaluations. So for us, geological heritage seemed okay, because of course we are not asking for unique geological heritage. This was some sites we have seen similar in other areas, but that was not a requirement. For us, it looked okay. So, but how could we deal with this? But obviously, it was not reflecting all the criteria. Next, please. So during the mission, we had a lot of discussions. We had questions, demonstration of one of these planned panels and design manual, and it was a very, very nice design, a handbook, everything was planned well. And then you can also take the next one, Konstantina, because we had this final meeting, a big meeting with all the stakeholders. Of course, before we had these discussions, all the mayors were there, very nicely dressed, a lot of nice food, a lot of other politicians. And of course, they asked us, what do you think? Of course, we did not give any conclusions because we know that we are not going to do that. But we have to inform, we had to say something. So what we did was, of course, to explain in a polite way what we have seen, nice things. And then we gave to everybody the information of the different outcomes that could happen about acceptance, defer, and rejection. And I must say that this was obviously a premature application. And I've said always after that, disappointed mayors, disappointed stakeholders, they are very expensive. We did what we had to do. We were following the criteria, even if this was before 2015, the criteria existed. And it did not meet the requirements. So after a thorough report, we suggested rejection. We contacted the territory to explain after the decision. We tried to keep contact. The consequences is, for me personally, very, very sad, because the territory has disappeared totally, has not reapplied, did not try even to repair, because they could have done. What I heard later, and not in a formal way, was that one of the my co-evaluator was actually some complaints about the behavior, which was not right. We were together all the time when we were together with the people there. This is for me a very bad experience, a sad experience, but it is underlining we need to keep to the criteria. We cannot make our own opinions, even if the people are very nice. Next, please. Also going abroad, we need to go to territories where you will need translations. Yamping, thank you very much for mentioning also this issue for China. Sometimes, especially I think I met this in Japan, the territories have a translator or interpreter in the permanent staff. Of course, then we meet translators that are really skilled in, and they know the geopark area, they know the people there, they know the partners, they know the guides. But of course, in some areas, they have to use a translator or interpreter for the mission. So meeting this issue is, of course, requiring a special kind of awareness and sensitivity. You have to note, and it's not very difficult, and I must say I have always had very good experiences with using the translator, but of course it is challenging. It takes more time because you also have to watch and to try to understand the communication between the staff and the interpreter. How well is the different scientific themes addressed? Because we know from before, when we have prepared, we know the science, we know the geology, we know a lot of things from beforehand. So how well is this addressed through the interpreter? That is something you have to be aware of. And don't be shy to ask the question, it's the same question several times to the different people, because this is also helping us to understand that the level and the quality of the translations. Watch the body language, see if they are uncomfortable about things. And again, to Yamping, remember that very, very often our hosts are understanding English very well, but they hesitate to speak. So this is an important issue. And of course, the picture on the side here, and also, as you said, Kirsten, be aware of the cultural differences, respect them, and of course, always bear in mind that there can be other explanations than your first thoughts when you are traveling like this. Next, please. And sometimes this is a different kind of these pictures are from a different kind of mission, but this is also things that you can experience during both evaluations and revalidations, because difficult situations can really occur. When you see, for example, that the geological heritage is not managed well, maybe because of climatic things, maybe because of a lack of understanding of the conservation issues. Sometimes even you can see that some people are proud because they can benefit from selling their geological heritage. It can also be a problem of littering. We are talking about geotourism. We are talking about people coming and wanting to come back, and the impressions that the territory is bringing to the visitors. So littering is maybe not easy everywhere in the world to solve by the geopark, but sometimes you need to address it. Also, the infrastructure. Sometimes we are in very rural areas, and of course it cannot be expected that a geopark can fix everything. It's really important to address the issue, but of course not expect the geopark, the territory, to be able to fix everything, but to mention and to discuss in an open and friendly way and see how they are reflecting on, because we are not going there with solutions. The solutions need to be found in the territory. We are not going there to tell everything how they will fix things. This is also to bear in mind. Next, please. So, not depending on what kind of missions you are doing, there are some really main issues for all kinds of missions. The criteria are rules. The criteria for geoparks are not advices. And we will see difficult situations connected to this, but it must be addressed. It's honest and good discussions need to be done while we are together. So all the missions need to have time for these good discussions. And you should be ready to discuss and explain also these difficult topics. And explanations is not saying you have to do this and have to do this, just explain the frame. And be polite. We are not going there as enemies. We are not going there as the big judges. I borrowed your expression, Guy, and also I noted, Kirsten, that you mentioned the same smile. Really, because there are so many nice people, and just keep the smile and be polite. I think also it's very important for the new applications to open up for these possible outcomes and do what we did when we were in my first examples, to explain very clearly who is doing the decisions. We are writing the reports based upon what we have experienced. The decision is made by the council, and it's important to talk about all the three possible outcomes. And also, as a continuation from yesterday, and also several others have stressed this, be prepared on all the items that we have discussed or seen examples of before today. Agree on the itinerary based upon the documents you sent by UNESCO and the conversation with the territory that you are going to visit, and stick to it as long as you can, if there are nothing else happening for weather conditions, because it's also about the respect for the people waiting for our visit. So I think that was just some of my experiences from my missions that I think you can all risk to see some like these things on your missions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. I think a lot of the things that you've mentioned are probably going to be familiar to people as well. They're going to have been in similar situations. I remember that you told me as well, disappointed mayors are very expensive, and we've known a similar case. Sometimes there's a lot of pressure on a geopark team as well to apply, and the pressure from higher up, even if they know that they're not ready yet. And it's always a very awkward situation then to have to assess a geopark in those circumstances. So that's bringing me again to the question: how can we identify premature ones and act before it's too late? I take as well your point here about the language. I think from our side, we try to always make sure that at least one of the two evaluators speaks the language of the territory that is going to visit. But sometimes you really have to go through the interpretation, and you're absolutely right. It's important that the person that knows the territory and knows the technical terminology. I think a lot of the points that we've heard here are going to be very useful not only to add in the guidelines for evaluators, but also to prepare sites better for the assessment. So we'll have to reflect how we take all these points that you've shared with us and make sure that they become somewhat standard guidelines. Konstantin, I'm not sure if we had any presentation left, but I know that Elias was also connected. I know that he was out in the field. I'm not sure if he is still connected and wants to say something.
Dear Chris, I'm sorry, but he has internet connection problems, so he will not
out in the field in Italy,
manage
so
to continue.
That's perfectly fine. Thanks a lot, Konstantina. Hartmut, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I have a short question, and I guess I understood, Christine, that you said you had contact with the geopark after the mission, and this is something I would like to ask. So I experienced the same, that so after a mission in many cases is before the next mission, and if a geopark is not agreeing with the results by the council, it may appear that they address the evaluator to talk on behalf of them. And I think this is, in a way, it can be very dangerous. And I guess we need some kind of policy how to deal with these kind of issues, because it can be dangerous.
Yeah, thank you for raising it. I was wondering whether I was going to say something about that. I've also had a real experience of pressure because of the decisions, not from the same territory. The contact that we had afterwards was really to try to explain the result and try to get them to gain guts to continue. We were not discussing the result, and I really the pressure that was from another geopark because of a different outcome that than they wanted was really uncomfortable, and it cannot be accepted. And it's really not that kind of contact we should have after missions. So, but this was just because they were asking, but what was really the difficulty? And in that case, it was very easy to show that it was clearly not ready. But I agree, we need to be very careful about that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think you're going there just to do the assessment, but you should not become the coach afterwards to guide them further in the process, because it can be positive, but it can also turn bad. I think if there is awkward questions, you have to cut it short, refer to the secretariat. That's our role then to take on the communication with the geopark. I think for that reason, we also take out the name of the mission report before we put it online. Of course, the geopark knows who has been there, but we don't want to put it public who has made that judgment. So I think we have to protect the evaluators as much as possible. You do your job as an evaluator, but that's where it ends. Are there any other questions? I know that we're now 45 minutes beyond the time that we had initially foreseen. For people in the East, it must be extremely late. But if you're still wanting to raise a question, I see Arthur has his hand up.
Yeah, only to say that from the experience as an evaluator, there are something that to me it is clear now that in any circumstance does not exist the perfect geopark. What I mean with it, that every time we have observations to make, we have experiences to share, we have recommendations to report, and it's always a moment of when we interact strongly with those that are receiving us with many illusions. They work hard in many situations. They work hard. They involve the local people, the local politicians, the local authorities, and it is always a challenge that we are facing. So all these beautiful interventions of the previous colleagues sharing with us their experiences are very, very useful. And all the situations regarding, there are something that is look like simple, like take a picture, that could be a problem. So even on this, we need to take care, because there are situations when a picture could be a problem. So in any time, this is only to illustrate this, that in any time we must be aware of a big amount of possibilities, because there are different cultural approaches. There are many issues in these very intensive 3 days in the field and 5 days in the territory. So it's my last contribution for those that are participating in this from my part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Artur. Richard, good to see you.
Good to see you, and good to see everybody else. We've talked a lot about evaluations, and there are many benefits to UNESCO and GGN from evaluations, not least in keeping up the quality of geoparks. But we should also remember that certainly in the case of revalidations, the revalidation evaluation is very important for the host geopark, not least because it underlines the importance of the geopark, and it concentrates the minds of partners and local communities and decision makers in national and local government. So it's always very important to be very positive at all times without giving away your thoughts on whether the geopark is, what color of card it's getting. But so it's very important to be positive, and especially if talking to politicians, to sell the whole concept of geoparks to them, to underline the importance of the work that GGN and UNESCO do. So just throwing that one in for any new evaluators who may be listening. And thank you again for everything.
Thank you so much, Richard. I think that's the thin balance here between providing advice without showing exactly what final judgment you're going to give, because you don't want to build up false expectations, false hopes. And this is something that's brought, sometimes you as an evaluator, but then eventually the council in an awkward position. That's a little bit the tact, the diplomatic feeling that each of you will have to develop. If you don't have it, learn it. It's going to depend as well on the context, but that's exactly a very good point. I'm not sure if there is any other questions. I was very startled by the comment of Setsuya Natakada, but now I understand that it's a wrong chat, because I was really wondering who is trying to force volcano here, but I think that's part of a different chat. I see no other questions in the chat, or am I wrong? Am I missing something? Nope. All right, but then I think we can close here. Let me thank all of you for for connecting in the first place, and for your overall commitment, not only throughout all the different missions, but also for your openness to share your experience. I think it's been a very rich 2 days that we've gone through. From our side, we will try to gather all these important points and see, as I said, see how we can build them into the guidelines for the evaluators, but also to see how we can interpret that somewhat, translate that somewhat towards tips and hints for geoparks that are being evaluated or revalidated. But really, thanks everyone that we've asked, but everyone that took spontaneously the floor as well to share his or her experience. That's been very, very much appreciated. I think we will try to make this available as well. I will have to see with Constantina and Nicolas how we can. It's going to be a lot of hours of recording now, but if there is a possibility to cut it up somewhat and to make it available for all of you. And then there were a few links shared. There were a few documents referred to throughout the last 2 days. We will see how we can provide them as well. And if there is any question that you have regarding everything that has been said throughout the seminar, or any question that flows from the preparation of the missions, for those who are set up for missions, please never hesitate to contact us. We will be happy to guide you and to assist you. I'm not sure, Nicolas or Guy, if you wanted to say something at the very end.
Yeah. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you for all these. I would like just to express my thanks to all the colleagues, especially those in Far East, staying so late tonight with us. Of course, I would like to thank once again all the participants, and I would like to thank you for being ready, for carrying once again evaluation and revalidation mission this year. I think you really, with all your intervention, with all your participation in this seminar, you made easier and more effective the evaluation and revalidation exercise of this year. So thank you once again, and don't hesitate, as Christophe said, to send us your comments, your questions, if there are any, and we will make all this document, as Christophe said, available to all of you in case that you want to see once again something and get further benefit of the exchange that has been made. And we learn also. We took lessons from this seminar, and be sure that we will try to use all these proposals that you have made to make it even better next year for all the evaluators, and especially for the new ones who will have also the experience of this year's mission. So thank you so much once again, and I hope to see you soon, if not earlier. With all of you, we will meet in September in Morocco. Please don't forget that we have the 10th International Conference on UNESCO Global Geoparks, and we should be all together to celebrate our great network in Mgoun UNESCO Global Geopark. See you all there.